Want to catch the game on the go? Then switch to Metro by T-Mobile and you'll never miss a dunk. With Metro, you'll get access to a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S., just like the big guys. So you can catch all the action. Plus, you'll save a ton over what you're paying with AT&T or Verizon. Score big with Metro. Switch now and save big on a great network. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. Note that coverage not available in some areas. Stop by a store for details and terms and conditions.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM dial nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80. Also, ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Peloton. Live studio classes in the comfort of your home. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Welcome. It is Super Bowl week officially. Super Bowl 53, Atlanta, Georgia. Because the shutdown was resolved, I no longer have to drive down to Atlanta, which I absolutely positively was intending to do from New York City. Yes, I was going to drive down to Atlanta if the shutdown had not been resolved. Everybody could call me whatever they want to call me. I called myself a punk, simply meaning that I was scared. That's all it meant. I will tell you this. I'm not showing up with no air traffic controllers out there. I'll tell you that much right now. Air traffic controllers calling out of work. Steve wasn't getting in the air. I'll tell you that right now. But having said all of that, that's been resolved, at least for the next 3 weeks. And as a result, you should see a lot of folks traveling into Atlanta, where Super Bowl 53 would take place with the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. We got a lot of stuff to get into a little bit later on as the show progresses, since Tom Brady has announced he will not retire. This definitely will not be his last game. Which obviously is something that I anticipated, considering the fact that he had been talking for years about trying to play until he was 45 years of age. We've got Patrick Chung for the New England Patriots calling out the Los Angeles Rams, and Brandon Cooks responding in inarticulate fashion, I might add, because I don't know what the hell he was saying. But nevertheless, it is what it is. We'll definitely get into that a little bit later on in the show. But I think the order for the day is to start the show with the NBA, because Anthony Davis, the superstar for the New Orleans Pelicans, clearly one of the top 3 or 4 players on the planet, has announced through his agent, Rich Paul, for Clutch Sports, that indeed he has no intentions of re-signing with the New Orleans Pelicans. His contract runs not just through this season, but through next season, and he's free and eligible for free agency in the summer of, 2020? And so because of that, it's one of those situations where everybody's looking and they're saying, well, what are the Pelicans going to do? Well, let me first break this down. The New Orleans Pelicans has the right to Anthony Davis. He does not have his own rights. They own his rights until after next season. So understand something right here, right now, ladies and gentlemen. Just because a whole bunch of people want to get their hands on Anthony Davis does not mean that for the immediate future, does not mean that the New Orleans Pelicans are in a position where they have to capitulate. They do not. They absolutely positively do not. The reality of the situation is you can look at it any old way you want to. They don't have to capitulate. Their mentality is, look, man, we ain't going to just give them away. We ain't going to just give them away. And Rich Paul, I can tell you, Rich Paul has been starving for Anthony Davis to give him the permission to announce to the world that he had no intentions of resigning for quite a while. Adrian Wojnarowski, our own very own Woj, tweeted earlier today, Agent Rich Paul has notified the New Orleans Pelicans that all NBA forward Anthony Davis has no intentions of signing a contract extension if and when presented, and that he has requested a trade. Paul told ESPN on Monday. Rich Paul to ESPN on a preferred destination for Anthony Davis. Quote, Anthony wants to be traded to a team that allows him the chance to win consistently and compete for a championship. I guess that rules the Knicks out. I guess that's that. Now, I say that because in all honesty and fairness, our very own Brian Windhorst, who does an exceptional job covering the NBA, by the way, said that the New York Knicks had a chance. Hell no, they don't. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Now I got my producer extraordinaire who's a bit eccentric and dare I say wild and off his rocker half the time. Jonathan Winthrop, who said, you know what? You're the Knicks. Do you trade Kristaps Porzingis in a first round pick to get Anthony Davis? I say no. And the reason why I say no, ladies and gentlemen, is because it ain't going to leave you anywhere other than where you are. Anthony Davis has been in the National Basketball Association for 8 years. Anthony Davis has made the postseason twice. They've won playoff series when they've made the postseason. At least last year they did when they swept the Portland Trail Blazers in 4 games. But the reality is that Anthony Davis, virtually by himself, in a market like the New York Knicks, ain't going to do anything but show you even more what you saw in New Orleans, that he can't do it by himself. Phenomenal player. Phenomenal. Without question. But this move is made because Anthony Davis wants to end up in L.A., which brings us to Earvin Magic Johnson. That's the real story here. It's not about Anthony Davis wanting out. We all knew that. It's not about Anthony Davis wanting out before his contract expires. We all knew that. It's not about the Boston Celtics, who are obviously the team with the most tradable assets to acquire him. And it's not about the fact that because of that Rose rule that prohibits you from having 2 guys who utilize the rule to get salaries that take up 25 to 30% of a team's payroll, you can't have them on the same team. Which means that the Boston Celtics, in order to acquire Anthony Davis, can't trade him for Kyrie and can't keep Kyrie this season while acquiring Anthony Davis this season. They would have to move Kyrie Irving to bring in Anthony Davis. And the reason why I don't think that would happen, ladies and gentlemen, is because, A, did you see the show that Kyrie Irving put on Saturday night? Let me tell y'all something right now. Kyrie Irving's box office. He's not just a champion. He's not just a superstar. He's box office. Kyrie Irving is one of those rare individuals you walk through the turnstiles to see. How would I know this? You are listening to a man that covered the first 10 years of Allen Iverson's career. A 6-foot guard from Georgetown. That dude. The answer. That dude. And I got news for you. I challenge y'all. And I ask you this question, Jonathan Winthrop and Nuno, look at me when I'm talking to y'all. Have y'all seen a miniature guard that size since Allen Iverson that was box office like Kyrie Irving? Remember, Steph Curry's a legitimate 6'3". And if you want to throw him into that category, okay, say him and Kyrie. But Kyrie Irving is box office. You walk through the turnstiles to watch this brother perform. I was on Get Up the other morning, show Mike Greenberg show with Jalen Rose and the crew on ESPN every weekday morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. The other day, they asked me, in terms of ball handling skills, who's the man, Kyrie or Steph Curry? I'm like, are you kidding me? Is this a trick question? There's nothing to discuss here. You damn right it's Kyrie Irving. You go to Steph Curry for that shot. But in terms of dancing on people and using a nasty handle to put on a show, a la Kenny Anderson back in the day, a la Dwayne Pearl Washington back in the day, God rest his soul. Y'all remember that former star at Syracuse? What a show. In college, just so y'all know, to put it in perspective for all of you young whippersnappers out there, Dwayne Pearl Washington, God rest his soul, was a greater show in college than Michael Jordan. Ask Dick Vitale. Ask Jay Billis. Ask Jay Williams. Ask Jim Boeheim. Ask anybody. When it came to a show in college basketball, there was no greater show than Dwayne Pearl Washington. And anybody that saw him play in college at Syracuse knows I'm right. And you got to remember, I go back to the days of Marbury and Kenny Anderson, Dwayne Pearl Washington, before that, Mark Price when he was at Georgia Tech with that shot off the dribble the way that he did it. Kenny Smith when he showed up at North Carolina. Bobby Hurley and the crew. It don't matter. Dwayne Pearl Washington, to this day, as we're standing here right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the greatest show in the history of college basketball that we have ever seen. Ask our very own Mark Jackson for ABC and ESPN if I'm lying. Ask him. But I digress. I brought up Magic Johnson's name for a reason. See, the reason I brought up Kyrie and all of this other stuff is because I'm telling y'all what the roadblocks are to the potential maneuverability of an Anthony Davis. Here's what it comes down to as it pertains to Earvin Magic Johnson. He is the one on the clock. It's not LeBron James. It's not Luke Walton. It's Earvin Magic Johnson. The Magic Man is on the clock. And my God, my brother Magic Johnson, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything at all I can do for you? I cannot tell y'all how much I'm rooting for this to happen. And that's no knock against the Pelicans or whatever. Alvin Gentry is a damn good coach and he's done a good job. Dell Demps is a good job. You're in New Orleans. Unfortunately, the small markets, they hate it. They're already questioning it. You got executives and agents that are already ticked off that Rich Paul and Clutch Sports are in a position to have a player, the marquee of Anthony Davis, demanding to be removed from the smaller market so he can go to La or someplace like that. Anthony Davis wants to be a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. That's not the only team he wouldn't mind playing for, but that's clearly at the top of his list. This is why it's going down. And if y'all are doubting me, let's understand the way this business works. Let's just educate somebody and let's just take the wool away from our eyes, okay? Why the hell you think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope got $17 million last year? Why do you think that happened? You think it wasn't a foregone conclusion that LeBron James, who had bought not one but two $20+ million homes in Brentwood, wasn't coming to L.A.? Come on. You really think that it was a possibility he was going to the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid? So in other words, I'm going to leave Cleveland and go right up the road to similar weather conditions in the same conference for the Philadelphia 76ers after what I did to the city of Cleveland with Miami? Stop it. It was never, ever a real viable option for him to go to Philly. He was going to one place, and that was to L.A. Hell, if it wasn't staying in the East, you might as well go back to Miami. He wasn't doing that. LeBron James was going to L.A. That's where he was going. Okay? So let's just stop it. You facilitate things by taking care of his guy with his client. Now you've got a situation with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a superstar. Anthony Davis is one of the top 5 players, probably top 3 player on the planet Earth. He's that great. He's that great. He can play 4 different positions. He can guard 4 different positions. He's that great. He walks around averaging 28 and 12 in his sleep. He's that great. He got a J. He can pull up off the dribble. He can play with his back to the basket. He can post up. He can shoot mid-range. Plus, he can defend the center. He can defend any frontline position you ask him. And in some cases, he can defend guards. He's that great. So what do we have? We have a situation where because of that reality, everybody's going to want him. But the only viable option is the Lakers. Why? Because even though other teams can get into the mix, because the Pelicans, like Alvin Gentry said a month ago, we're not trading him. We're not planning on trading him. It's a non-story. I don't want to hear what the hell y'all got to say. Well, he was able to say that when Anthony Davis would not demand a trade. But now that the time has arrived and Anthony Davis is demanding a trade, is requesting rather a trade, and that has been put out for public consumption, Anthony Davis basically is telling everybody, I want to be a Laker. So anybody that trades the farm to get him, because he's making about $27 million. He's at $25.4 million this year. And the last year of his deal, he's at $27 million next season. He's basically saying, look, anybody that acquires me, you could trade the farm to get me, but I'm probably not going to stay. Now, how many teams you think is going to be like the Toronto Raptors, where they're willing to get rid of DeRozan and take their chances just so they could get their hands on Kawhi Leonard with Danny Green? Obviously, to Kawhi Leonard, who probably may leave at the end of this season. Masai Ujiri, the general manager for the Toronto Raptors, was willing to take that chance and roll that dice because Toronto had tried on numerous occasions to win with DeMar DeRozan, and that didn't work out. Ostensibly because they kept running into LeBron. But in the case of Kawhi Leonard, unless you convince him to stay in Toronto, you rolled the dice, you took your chances. How many teams you think is going to be willing to take those chances with Anthony Davis? If you're the Boston Celtics, you got to give up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and a Terry Rozier and a pick to get Anthony Davis. Why are you going to do that for a guy that's non-committal and staying long-term when you're already challenging for the Eastern Conference crown right now? If you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you can unload Ben Simmons along with a couple of picks and Lord knows who else outside of Joel Embiid to get your hands on Anthony Davis, why would you do that if he's going to leave you in a year? Why would you do that? So if you're the Pelicans, you want to hold hard and fast, and you are in a position, make no mistake, they're not devoid of leverage here. They can sit up there and demand a farm from the Lakers. I want Kyle Kuzma. I want Brandon Ingram. I want Lonzo Ball. I want Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's last year $12 million head salary that I can get off my books at the end of the year. And I want a first-round pick. They're in a position to demand that from the Lakers. And the Lakers, ladies and gentlemen, unlike the Paul George sweepstakes, unlike all of that, unlike the discussions this summer when they were trying to get Kawhi Leonard, unlike then, the Lakers don't have the same kind of leverage now. Because here's where the problem lies. The Pelicans don't have his rights until the end of this season. They have it until the next end of the following season. So the Pelicans can sit there and stand pat. NBA trading deadline coming up, and they can simply say, yo, we ain't moving them anywhere until this summer. Well, by the time the summer rolls around, Boston's a competitor. And Anthony might consider going to Boston. He might be willing to commit to a long-term deal in Boston with some of the talent they'd still have in place to play alongside with him. So if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, whereas you played hardball and you wanted to hold on to a Kyle Kuzma and you didn't want to let him go, that ain't necessarily the case now. You don't have that. We all know how much I love Kyle Kuzma. We all know how much I don't want the Lakers to lose Kyle Kuzma. I'm here to tell you something right now. If you got to give him up to get Anthony Davis, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. And if you're the Lakers, you literally don't have that choice at this point. You got to be willing to give the New Orleans Pelicans anything they want outside of LeBron James. You have to do that now. There's no way around it. You have to do that. That cannot be the situation. You don't have a choice. And see, here's the other part that nobody's discussed, and I brought this up this morning. You know where things went awry for Magic to such a degree? When he lost out on Paul George. Paul George elected to stay in Oklahoma City instead of coming to L.A. now turns out to may have been the worst thing that could have happened to the Lakers. Because you see, Paul George was a free agent, free to go elsewhere. And Paul George would have arrived to the Lakers for nothing but cash. So Paul George, along with LeBron James, will have joined the Lakers, enabling them to have him while keeping Kuzma and Josh Hart and Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, etc. But Paul George, who, by the way, is averaging 28 a game and playing like a superstar in this league and is a viable league MVP candidate this year, decided not to go to L.A. and elected instead to stay in Oklahoma City. And because that's what Paul George elected to do, now you got to go out and get some other assets. But Kawhi is not talking about coming to the Lakers. And Kevin Durant is not talking about coming to the Lakers. A matter of fact, when we hear those two names, we hear the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Clippers. which makes the urgency to acquire Anthony Davis even more profound. But in order to get Anthony Davis, you have to trade assets instead of acquiring him as a free agent. Which means that if you had Paul George, you would have been contending for a crown the way that he's playing with the assets that you have, not having had to give up anything. So rightfully focusing on LeBron James was one thing, but they should have elevated the level of pressure on Paul George as much as they possibly could have. That didn't happen, and now the Lakers are where they are. Because if the Lakers don't get Anthony Davis, and Kawhi and Durant elect to go elsewhere, or in Durant's case, especially, elect to stay in Golden State while Kawhi doesn't come to the Lakers, LeBron's not going to win a championship in LA. They're not going to do it. And that's the reality of the situation that is simply inescapable, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how else to break this down. And I don't want to hear anything about the Knicks. I'm rooting for the Knicks. But I told y'all before this season, the New York Knicks needed two pivotal things. Forget their record. I'm not holding them accountable for their sorry record because we understood with Porzingis out, not healthy, we knew this was a foregone conclusion. I needed to see two things. I needed to see surreal development on a part of Kevin Knox, the first round number 9 overall pick. And I needed to see Porzingis return by March with 6 weeks left in the season, reminding the world of the star that he is. So you could attract a free agent to want to come to New York. Without that, it means nothing. And I said all of that, not seeing at all, completely being blind to the Brooklyn Nets. The cap space, the young talent, the leadership of Sean Marks and that organization right now. The Brooklyn Nets, ladies and gentlemen, look special. If they get a star, or dare I say two of them, oh my God. Oh my God. I don't even want to talk about what it would do for the Knicks. It would depress me. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. 30 minutes past hour number 1. This first hour of the Stephen A. Smith Show. We have the man himself who revealed via his tweet this morning that Anthony Davis officially wants out of New Orleans. It was a foregone conclusion. We all knew this was existing. But the fact that it was made public and official came via where all the information usually comes when it comes to the NBA. Adrian Wojnarowski. Wojo is what we affectionately call him. He will be up next to break all of this down. Probably a hell of a lot better than I could. He's up next, right here. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Discover why 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. Search for greatness. Search Indeed. Your calls are more in a minute with Stephen A. Wojnarowski, first, before your calls in a minute. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Want to catch the game on the go? Metro has you covered. With Metro, you get access to a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S., just like the big guys, so you'll never miss any of the action. Plus, you'll save a ton over what you're paying with AT&T or Verizon. Score big with Metro. Switch now and save big on a great network. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. Note that coverage not available in some areas. Stop by a store for details and terms and conditions.
Edible underpants. Never classy. Edible arrangements? Always classy. It's easy to make a big impression this Valentine's Day with the freshest fruit and the finest chocolate from Edible Arrangements. Don't wait until the last minute. Place your Valentine's Day order by February 10th and save 20% on all pickup orders over $50. Stop by your local Edible Arrangements and experience love at first bite, or order online and have delicious delivered at edible.com.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. So make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Also, if you missed any of my opening segment, don't worry. You can check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Podcast, brought to you by the new Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, and 1% on all other purchases. Hey, what's in your wallet? 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Always my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line, my colleague, the NBA insider extraordinaire, the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski is on the line with yours truly as we speak. What's going on, Wojo? How are you, buddy?
I'm great, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you breaking that news on Twitter this morning about Rich Paul and these guys making it official to New Orleans that Anthony Davis would not sign a contract extension, that he indeed wants out. When you heard the news and it was official, because of the timing specifically, Woj, what jumped to your mind?
Well, it gives Anthony Davis a window here to be traded to a team that's not Boston. Because Boston cannot do a trade for Anthony Davis as long as Kyrie Irving is on the roster, based on the kinds of contracts they have. And so there's a window here that if New Orleans decided to do a deal, they really can't engage with Boston until after the season. And so this is a window specifically for the Lakers to cobble together their best offer and go to New Orleans with it. But there's lots of other teams around the league listen, everybody in the league wants to be involved at this at some level. And so the question is going to be how willing the Pelicans are to do a deal here in the next 10 days before the trade deadline, because there's not pressure. Remember, he's signed through next season. And so there's not pressure on the Pelicans to do a deal right now. The best case for them is probably to have Boston in the bidding if they're going to trade him and if they decide they're going to move him. The timing of this certainly fits with enough time left between now and the trade deadline on the 7th for there to be some serious talks and if New Orleans wants to proceed on trade, they've got a window to do it.
Woj, what took Anthony Davis so long to want to make this official? You and I both know Rich Paul wanted this official months ago, but Anthony Davis was very, very reluctant to just come out and state plainly, I'm not going to sign, I'm not going to re-up with you guys, I want out. What took him so long?
Stephen, it's not easy to do for a player to, when you play your whole career in a city and you love the place and you really love a lot of your teammates and you've got relationships, and because you're going to take a lot of heat to do it, and you may not get the trade you want right away, and you may have to play the rest of the season out, and it's not easy to do that. I think Anthony wanted to give the Pelicans every chance to surround them with talent, to build on what they did last season, get into the second round in the West, and injuries have certainly derailed this team. And but I think for Anthony Davis, I think in his mind he went as far as he was going to go, or he had gone as far as he could go with this group, and now he gives the Pelicans a clear sense of where he stands. And they've got to make a decision now on how to proceed. Adrian
Wojnarowski right here with Stephen A. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Woj, is this really about Boston and L.A. competing against one another for Anthony Davis' services, as if to say, listen, these are the two likely teams he would re-up with long term, or are there really other viable teams, other viable destinations that he would strongly consider?
Well, I think certainly L.A. and Boston right now. I'm told it's a short list, and I think certainly market size is going to matter. New York would like to be involved in this. Everybody wants to be involved in this. Does New York have enough to offer? Even if they put Kristaps Porzingis in a trade, the Knicks, New Orleans doesn't know that he would re-sign with them. He could just take his qualifying offer and start moving forward. So. Tougher for New York. I think if you are the Pelicans, getting in a bidding situation and knowing, especially if you're going to get draft picks, Boston has contingencies on a few of their first-round picks. You want to know where that pick's going to land. Here's the one other scenario, Stephen, that's going to be interesting to watch.
Okay.
There are going to be contenders, and I'm already hearing from them today. There are going to be contenders who would treat Anthony like a rental and say, we think with Anthony Davis, if we trade for him, maybe it gets us, we think we could get to the finals with him. Maybe we could win it with him. Maybe we could, knowing that they have him for the rest of the season. And if at the end of the year he doesn't want to go forward with them, then they're in a position to trade him to Boston or LA, get them in an auction, and they could get back all the assets that they traded to New Orleans to get him. So watch for that scenario too. I think this will be a lot wider. This will be much wider open in terms of the offers New Orleans gets between now and the trade deadline than just Boston or just LA, because Boston can't be involved in this right now unless they're willing to move Kyrie Irving, and that's. They want Kyrie Irving there to play with Anthony Davis.
Very interesting perspective coming up from Adrian Wojnarowski right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. That was my next question. I was going to Kyrie because Kyrie, I consider him a superstar, Woj. He's not just a talent, but he's box office. When you see him and the way he dances on people, you're watching him Saturday night, for example, you want to walk through the turnstiles to see this young brother perform. Having said all of that, with all the other parts around him, the way Terry Rozier looked like last year without Kyrie Irving once he had went down. Marcus Smart's got a new $52 million deal. You see that they've got these other guys. They got to find a way to ingratiate Gordon Hayward a bit better because you got Golden State Warriors quoted as saying he's hurting them, he's slowing them down, et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering, even though the preference would be to have Kyrie to play alongside Anthony Davis, how willing do you believe, if it really, really came down to it, would Danny Ainge be to unload Kyrie Irving this year just to make sure he got his hands on Anthony Davis? I think it's slim to none, but I want to ask you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Stephen. And, again, this is a 10-day window here. I think Boston certainly knows. Kyrie Irving has come out and said, he did it very publicly, I'm going to resign. I'm going to stay in Boston. But if they want to solidify that fully, then they'll bring in Anthony Davis, and they have enough around Kyrie to do that. Now, remember, they can agree to a trade around the draft or prior to the draft, like where the pieces don't, once the season's over, they could be in agreement on a trade that doesn't get finalized until July 1. I mean, deals happen around the draft where you're picking players for another team, but the deal won't be official for another 8 or 9 days. So it's not like they literally have to wait till July 1. And they could have the conversation right now, Stephen. Boston could tell them, here's what we might be willing to give you. Here's what we would be willing to give you when the season's over. Like, you could have all those conversations, and I would imagine Boston and New Orleans is going to talk here in the next, before the 7th.
So, Woj, with that being said, how much pressure is on Magic Johnson right now? I mean, we know it's a lot, but put into perspective for us. How much pressure is on Magic Johnson right now? Just so you know, Woj, my mentality is this. We don't know if Kyrie's going to come to the Lakers. As a matter of fact, he might not. We heard the quotes from Kevin Durant. He ain't thinking about playing with LeBron. Kyrie talked about staying in Boston. So you look at it from that perspective. The Lakers, without Anthony Davis, could potentially end up empty-handed, whereas you got teams like Brooklyn and the Clippers making noise about potentially having enough space to get 2 max guys. Talk to me about the pressure on Magic Johnson in light of all of those realities.
Well, you just said it. I think the fact that they're not a front-runner with the Lakers for any big free agent, that doesn't mean they won't get one.
Right.
But there's not a free agent this summer that they go to sleep at night and say, hey, we know we're getting that guy. That guy doesn't exist. Now, it can change, and a lot changes in the league between now and then. So they kept their assets and did not trade for Paul George. They held on to their assets and didn't trade for Kawhi Leonard. This is the time where they're probably going to have to ante up and offer to get that second star for LeBron James and to get one in Anthony Davis who – is a transcendent player. Like, players like him don't become available in the NBA. And you would think that LA would be willing to sacrifice their cap space this summer to know they could get Anthony Davis in right now. Now, do they have enough to offer New Orleans that would keep New Orleans from waiting it out, playing it out over a longer period? And remember, New Orleans isn't going to be – they're not dying – to trade Anthony Davis to the Lakers. No one's looking to help them. And that was true with the Spurs, and that was true with the Pacers when they went through it. And so they probably have to overpay to get a player. If all things being equal, they'll send him somewhere else.
And see, that's where I'm going, because for me, they're not going to help the Magic Johnson and the Lakers, which brings us back to Anthony Davis. Doesn't he practically have to say, look, anybody else who wants me, I'm not thinking about staying with you. I'm going to L.A., and if I have to wait until the summer of 2020 to pull it off, that's what it's going to take. But make no mistake, that's where I'm going. It almost is getting to the point, Woj, where he might have to say something along those lines to make this happen.
And he may yet do that, but they weren't ready to do that on the day that this news broke. And so they may do that between now and next week. They may tell other teams that. Now, that won't necessarily stop. I think Boston has confidence that if they got Anthony Davis and he was with Kyrie Irving and he played a year in Boston and they could offer him more money than the Lakers, that he wouldn't leave. And I think but now other teams, they're going to be more cautious in other markets about whether they could keep him. But I do think that is an angle that they can play, and they may move toward, but they haven't done it yet.
Last question for you. Like you said, Magic Johnson was hell-bent on holding on to Kuzma and to a lesser degree Ingram, in pursuit of Kawhi Leonard, in pursuit of Paul George. Are you at a point right now, like I am, where you're genuinely afraid that if Magic Johnson doesn't get Anthony Davis, he'll end up with nothing to pair with LeBron James over the next couple of years?
Well, the kind of A-list free agents that you would hope to get, like we know, we count them on one hand: Durant, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard. Now, there's a second tier, right? The Chris Middletons, the Kemba Walkers, who are very, very good players, but they're not transcendent. They're not first-team All-NBA. Then you're getting into that group, and I don't think the plan when LeBron James agreed to sign in L.A., that's not who he had in mind. He had Kawhi Leonard in mind. He has Klay Thompson in mind, and obviously Anthony Davis. So you're right, Stephen. I think there's tremendous pressure on them to deliver this summer and not run the risk of just waiting for free agency in 2020. They waited on free agency with Paul George. It didn't happen. With Kawhi, it's looking like it may not happen. Who know how long at LeBron's age and where he is? Does he want to just go through another summer of holding on to cap space to get to 2020?
Right.
I think that will be difficult for them to do. This isn't what he signed up for.
But Woj, isn't it true that it's a better chance for the Lakers to make a move now than to wait till the summer?
Oh, there's no question. And the question will be, are they going to offer? What are they going to offer New Orleans? How far are they willing to go? If you're the Pelicans right now and you're going to do business with LA, you have to be absolutely bowled over by the offer. If you think there's anything comparable, other teams are going to be making offers, or if you just think the Celtics, listen, Boston's best offer is going to be better than the Lakers' best offer. I mean, we can look at the rosters and we look at the draft assets, and we know Boston can make a more compelling offer than the Lakers can.
Yeah. Adrian Wojnarowski, always appreciate you. Great work, as always. The ultimate NBA insider for the family, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Appreciate you, buddy. You take it easy.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate you, too. Talk to you soon.
The one and only Adrian Wojnarowski, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. You heard what he said. You heard what I had to say. What do you have to say? We'll find out more and then some in the next hour and 15 minutes or so right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Peloton is a game-changing indoor cycling bike that brings the energy of live studio classes right to your home anytime you want, winter or summer, rain or shine. Whether it's a monthly challenge to meet your goals, a training program for your next race, or setting a new personal best, the Peloton bike will make you want to show up and keep climbing the live leaderboard year-round. On average,